All right, folks, we are ready to start the two-color I-cord cast on, and we are going to be casting on 120 stitches, and we're going to be using both of our yarns, our main color and contrast color, to create sort of a striped I-cord cast on. So we're going to start with our main color yarn, and we are going to be using the Longtail Method. And so I'm going to start with a little bit of a tail because we're only going to be casting on 3 stitches. When I work the Longtail cast on, I don't start with a slip knot. First, I create sort of a tension, I call it like a tightrope. Grab my needle, bring it down on the top, and give it a twist. Okay, and that's my first stitch. And the top is going to be going away from me. If you want to start with a slip knot, please feel free. So now I'm going to rotate my hand so that my palm is facing up. Bring my needle under the loop, through the loop, grab the yarn with my index finger, pull it through the loop. Drop it, pull it tight. And now I have 2 stitches. I'm going to do the same thing again one more time. Under the loop with my thumb, through the loop, grab the yarn with my index finger and pull it through. So now I have 3 stitches. Okay, I don't actually want to turn my work yet, because when you create an I-cord, you're kind of knitting around and around a little tube. So we're going to be creating the I-cord while also casting on new stitches for our cowl. Okay, so I have 3 stitches here on my right hand needle, and I'm going to slip them purlwise to my left hand needle. Okay, so you don't want to twist them, you just basically want to transfer them over here. You can do all 3 together at once. I know that's can sometimes make things go a little faster. Okay, so now I have 3 stitches on my left hand needle. Okay, and if you want to follow along with me with these instructions, they're on page 4. Okay, and we're going to begin with increased row, row 1, MS, CC. And this is where we're going to join our contrast color yarn. So I'm actually going to switch places here with my yarn. I'm going to keep my main color yarn here on the left and my contrast color on the right. And that sort of helps me with my yarn management. Okay, so now we're going to join our CC yarn. Leave a little bit of tails here. I like to leave longer tails than normal because once we finish our cowl, we're going to come back and tidy up the join with these extra ends. So it's okay if you have a little bit of extra yarn here. Okay, so increase row, row 1, MS, CC, and I'm writing this similar to the way that I write my patterns because we're on the main side of the fabric and we're working with our contrast color yarn. So that's what the MSCC means. Okay, so for the first stitch, we're going to work a KFB, which stands for knit into the front and back of the same stitch. And that's going to be creating a new stitch. So it's a 1 stitch increase. So I'm going to go into the stitch as if to knit into the front leg, and I'm going to knit 1, but I'm going to leave the stitch on my left hand needle, and I'm going to also knit. These first stitches are always a little tricky. Into the back of the stitch. And so now I have one new stitch, 2 stitches on my right hand needle. And now I'm just going to knit 2. Okay, so now we have, I can kind of give this a little tug. Now we have 4 stitches on our needles, right? I'm going to slip the first 3 stitches purlwise back to my left hand needle, but you want to leave this stitch on your right hand needle, okay? And that's how it's going to be for the rest of the cowl for the cast on. You're going to only be slipping the first 3 stitches back, and all of the rest of the stitches will remain on your needles. So now we're going to work increased row 1, MS, MC. Okay, so kind of drop your contrast color yarn, and you want to grab your main color yarn. Make sure that you're working with the actual working yarn and not not your tail. So now we're going to repeat the same exact thing that we worked for the increased row with our contrast color yarn. We're going to knit into the front and back, but now we're working with our main color yarn. And then knit 2, 1, 2. Okay, so you can kind of see how it's starting to take shape. It might be hard to see at first while you're beginning it, but this here along the bottom on the left is going to be the I-cord, and then these are going to be the stitches for the body of your cowl. So now we will end with slip 3, 1, 2, 3, and now we'll go back to row 1 again with our contrast color and not the tail. If you ever find that happens, I like to kind of just give it a little tug, not too tight, because once you work the next row with the color, it'll add the tension to it. And then slip 3, okay, tail here, working yarn here. So now do the same thing again. Knit front and back, knit 2. Slip. So now you're starting to see it a little bit more maybe. Here's the I-cord, and here are the stitches for the actual body of the cowl, and it'll be alternating between your contrast color and your main color all the way across. So I'll work a few more here on screen with you. Okay, but you're going to be repeating row 1, MC and CC until you have 121 stitches on your needles. So I'm going to stop here for a second. You can kind of see how my yarns are getting a little twisted. That is totally, that's just going to happen for this 2-color. So after I work several rows, I usually just kind of untwist my yarns. So yeah, you can actually see it a lot better now that I've worked several repeats. So here's the I cord, here are my tails, right? Those are my tails. This is my working yarn. So here's my I cord along the edge here, and this will actually be the top edge of your cowl. And then these are going to be the stitches for the body of the cowl right here, alternating between contrast color and main color, contrast color, main color, and so on and so forth. Okay, so continue repeating this until you get to the final row, which will actually be a decrease row, okay? Because you will have 121 stitches on your needles, and we're going to just decrease 1 stitch before we join in the round. And I will meet you back there. Okay, welcome back. I have cast on 121 stitches for my cowl, and you can see how cool the striped 2-color I-cord cast on looks. I'm kind of obsessed with it. Like, I want to use it for everything. Maybe not everything, but you can see that the last 4 stitches are actually in my main color yarn. So I ended with the row 1 MSMC, and I ended with the knit 2. So I didn't actually slip the 3 stitches back to the left hand needle. Okay, so your stitches should look like this as well. And I'm going to be joining in the round, but not quite yet. I need to work 1 final decrease row. And this is the final row. We're going to work it with our contrast color. Okay, so I'm going to slip 2 stitches, so just 2 this time, back to my left hand needle, and then with the contrast color I'm going to just knit these 2 together. And so now we are ready to join in the round. So you'll have 2 main colors and a contrast color next to each other. So it really won't matter in the end. When you join it in the round, you will not notice that. Okay, so now we are going to place a marker to note the beginning of the round, and we're going to join So don't break any of your yarn yet. We're not going to be breaking any yarn. And I actually love using this cast on to work in the round because it's really easy to see that I haven't twisted my stitches. So before joining, just make sure that your bottom or this I-cord hasn't been twisted around your needle. So I always just do like a double, triple check.